Welcome everybody to the Lure Fishing Podcast. This is episode 25, and as you can see, I'm Billy No Mates again, here on my own. But don't worry, Charlie Coppolo and Bradley Hunt will be joining us very, very soon, and Mr. Moir might make an appearance as well. Also in this episode, I've got a really special treat. I've been trying to get Ian Crook on the podcast for ages. For those of you that don't know, Ian is an angling tech master, so I've picked his brains a little bit later on. But first, I have some news. Two pieces of news. The first one I have to read from my phone because I'll forget. Bear with me. Oh, getting old. We're going to try something completely different and it might go horribly wrong. We're going to try and do a live podcast while we're doing a presentation at the same time. We must be bonkers. This is on Thursday the 8th of February at Mount Sorrel Working Men's Club. And we're going to liaise with Bennett's Bait and Tackle and Lures and Order.co.uk. So they're going to help us out with this. So I think it's for the Leicestershire PAC. We're going to do a Lure Fishing podcast, a kind of Q&A. There's going to be myself, Bradley, Charlie and Tom will be there. And we're going to present for the PAC, but we're going to project it live for you guys to watch as well. So that's Thursday the 8th of February. Now the reason I'm mentioning this now is that we need comments. So if we can go to the event with questions already from you guys, so ideally we need 5 really good questions because that will get the audience settled as well and they can start firing us off questions as well. So if you've got questions for the 4 of us, just send them to the comment section on the YouTube channel. I'll collate them and we'll get ready for the 8th of February. But I'll keep reminding you over the next couple of episodes as well. Right, second thing. A couple of weeks ago I got a phone call saying that I'd been nominated for Lure Angler of the Year. So this was a huge surprise and a great honour. So last week that would have appeared on the Angling Times feed and some lovely comments from you guys out there, so I really appreciate it. If anybody voted for me, thank you very much. Means a lot. And if you didn't vote for me but you voted for somebody else, that's brilliant as well because this is all about promoting lure fishing in the UK. So big up to Angling Times for having that category in there, and it's great to see lure angling actually working its way up the angling ladder. So like I said, from my perspective, great honour. Don't really care about the result because it's all down to who has the most mates, and as you can see, I ain't got any. Right, so I'm recording this on a Wednesday, but on Sunday last, we were down somewhere quite local to us, and the weather was Baltic. Tom Moir had organised an FFS Lures fishing, and Bradley was there as well. Now, I think Bradley's fallen in love with a fishing rod. Anyway, here's the fishing.
Oh yeah, so here we are. We're in Ely, and what I've done is we've organised an FFS get-together. So throughout the year we've had some, basically I've been travelling to see people in their fishing spots and just getting there on a Wednesday after work, just trying to keep everyone sane. Obviously as the winter's kicked in, we figured get people up here. So there's 10 of us at the moment, all fishing in this area. One guy's even come down from Manchester because he's only had a couple of zander in his time, and we said, oh, let's see what happens. And he's had one, and it's absolutely brilliant. So that's what we're doing. There's a few of us. It's been busy. It's been raining. It's been cold. It's been horrible, but it's been great to meet customers, and that's what it's all about. So I'm going to crack on because I've had a bite, and Bradley's getting in front of me.
Well, we've come down to this little spot. This place gets hammered to death, but it does throw up a few good fish. And managed to find a few waspy perch early on before we stopped for a coffee. One on the shad, and then the other 4 were on the FFS stick. But it's been a bit of a grind otherwise. I think one of the lads had a zander, his first ever law court zander. But we're going to see what we can find really. It's had a few knocks here this morning, but nothing committed, and went up to that bend further back. And yeah, see what we can find. Just going for the, don't tell Tom, it is his meet up. I've got a Zander Pro on at the minute, but
It's bitterly cold. This is really good fun. This is an FFS Lures fishing, and just Tom made it pretty, well, it's open to anybody who wants to come down. So we're having a lovely day. I've spent most of the morning in the calf. Nice. And I'm about to steal one of Bradley's rods, but he doesn't realise this yet. But, when he's not looking, I'm going to pick up his spare rod because being the angler, I can't be down here and not have a go. So as I mentioned, yeah, I'm sure Bradley's fallen in love with this rod. He kept showing me this bloody thing all morning, and it did look like a nice rod, to be honest. But I'll let him talk about it. So here's Bradley.
Okay, for this one, we have the brand new Savage Gear SG6 Revenge. Now, I got this one in a prize for me, and I wasn't really sure whether I was going to keep it at first. I didn't know anything about them, and I'm glad I looked them up and gave it a chance, because this is absolutely stunning rod. The retail at about 190 quid, something like that. It's got like a lovely deep, I don't know if it will show up on the camera, but the blank all the way up is like a lovely deep red, like crossweave carbon sort of finish. It's just absolutely stunning. It goes down to a matte black around the logo here, the SG6 and the Revenge, and you got the little Savage Gear logo there, and a really nice high quality cork handle, like split grip. This is the, you can see it there for you. It's the ultralight game model. So this one is a 7 foot, yes, just dead on 7 foot, fast action, 3 to 11 gram. And I've went and christened this, like a load of waspy perch and stuff, and it's just super sensitive, super nice. And it's definitely going to be a keeper. I'm not selling it. Yeah, this is going to be a lovely rod. It's going to be a great Ned rod, this. And yeah, like honestly, if you get a chance to check them out, like maybe at like one of the shows, like the big one, or if one of the tackle shops local to you stocks them or anything, I'd say this is very true to rating as well, this rod. I can't speak on the higher casting weight ones or anything because I've not used them. I've only used this one. But this one seems very true to rating at that 3 to 11. Whereas you get some rods nowadays, it tends to be way, way underrated. It's much stiffer than they claim to be because of the trend of people wanting a stiffer, pokier rod. And they just go, well, we'll just put the higher range one out with a lower number on it, and yeah, it feels nice and stiff then, nice and pokey. But this, yeah, spot on. Proper fast action, like true to its rating, really high quality. Check it out.
Charlie loves all things small. I've come to this realisation. He just likes catching fish. He doesn't care how big they are. He has spotted a really good competition. So I'm going to let Charlie now explain all about this Lurf comp.
What's happening, guys? Just a very quick one for me. I wanted to give a little bit of a shout out and give a little bit of information about something that I'm going to be taking part in this winter, and maybe so could you. So this is the Big Lurf Winter League. Now this is primarily a species hunt. So over the course of winter, it started on the 1st of December. The goal is to catch as many species as you possibly can, saltwater and fresh, on lures. Size is irrelevant. All you're trying to do is catch species. All you're going to need is to go onto the Big Lurf Facebook group. Announce on there, there'll be a post which you'll be able to see if you scroll down a few, that you want to take part. You'll be issued a number. Your number is then put on one of the cards, which I will send through to Andy, and I'm sure he'll put somewhere here for me to reference. So you'll get one of these cards that look a bit like this. You put your number in the middle and your name on the bottom. All you have to do is, over the winter, any fish you catch, take a photo with that card in the picture, and that will count towards your species tally over the winter. There are some rules. You have to have the lure in the photo wherever possible, preferably in the fish's mouth, if not alongside it. There is a few rules. There's really not a lot. It's not a super serious competition. It's more for encouraging people to get involved in lure fishing, and especially in LRF fishing and species hunting over the winter. Now, for all those of you who are not really interested in going after species, there is a couple of side competitions which may interest you. There is 2 specimen competitions. One longest flounder, so that is a total of your 3 longest flounder you catch over the winter, and then there's a longest perch for all you freshwater guys as well. So your 3 longest perch combined totals up, and whoever has the longest of those 3 at the end of the competition, at the end of the winter league, will win that prize, and they are totally separate to the species hunting. So You can do both, you can do either, you can do all three, entirely up to you. Now, the guys over at Big Lurf have done some fantastic work growing the sport in the UK in the last few years, especially the LRF and the saltwater species hunting side of things. And they've done fantastically well getting some fantastic sponsors on board for prizes for the Winter League. So we have HTO, Berkeley Gulp, Tackle Wave, who are the distributors of Majorcraft, Kitech, IMA, G-Crack. There's Street Fishing London, there is Todd Manor, Can Fishing Lures, Johnny Lurfer, On the Drop, Tanago Max, and some others as well that I haven't listed. Currently, there are over 200 anglers signed up, so it's a fantastic uptake from guys in the UK who want to get involved with species hunting. And like I said, freshwater, saltwater, species hunting, longest flounder, longest perch, there is something for everyone. And it's only been running for a few days as I'm now recording this, and some people are already in the high teens of species, which for this time of year is absolutely brilliant. Now, I'll be taking part. I probably won't be competing on any of the competitions, but I'll be doing it just for the fun and just to be involved with it. So I highly recommend it. If you're going to be doing any lure fishing this winter, it is entirely free to enter. You could definitely just go and sign up. I will say that the guys work incredibly hard, and there is a voluntary, and it's entirely voluntary, donation that is welcomed by them if you want to encourage them and help them in what they're doing in this journey in growing LRF fishing in the UK. Right, that's it with me. Go and get your cards, get involved with the Big Lurf Winter League, and see what you top up at the end of it.
Right, guys, on to the main part of the podcast. Now, I've been trying to get Ian Crook on the podcast for ages, but he's incredibly busy. Ian is a master of fishing technology. He's got a background in technology per se anyway, and he loves his fishing tech. So I managed to capture him early on the week. Now, this is ironic. We had to do so many retakes. I wanted to watch the Arsenal-Luton game, and I missed the whole bloody game because the internet kept dropping out. So you'll see in certain parts of this podcast that I did with Ian that it's really laggy, and we're trying to wait for each other to stop finishing talking. So it's not the best internet connection, and we keep losing it as we're going through the podcast, but you'll see what I mean as you watch this. Right, guys, behind the scenes, you won't have seen the problems we've had with the internet. We're going to keep this in. Right, guys, this is take 53. Anything else? Is the house fine? Roof's not going to fall off.
Yeah, that was the wife coming, checking what the bang was.
Right, guys, so this is take number 55, probably. And one of the people I really wanted to get on the podcast was Ian, because Ian is what he doesn't know about technology isn't worth knowing. So I'm really desperate to get Ian on. So Ian, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
You're welcome. It's good to be here, Andy.
Well, we'll see how long the connection lasts, because we're having all sorts of gremlins in the works. So no, thank you for joining me. Right, okay.
Well,
so
take 6 and 7.
Well, I don't know what take we're on now, buddy, but yeah, it's now about 11 o'clock at night, so we'll be all right. Now, before we get into technology, because I know a lot of people will go, oh, about time they're talking about a bit of tech. Let's just do a bit of a delve deep into who is Ian Crook and how he started fishing, because a lot of people would have seen you on Facebook holding up really big perch and some fantastic zander over the years as well. Now, I know you being who you are, you'll be saying, oh, it's down to Paul Parnell, because we had this little chat earlier, but I'm going to call you Mr. Perch for this episode. Okay, so that's okay. What it's going to be. Okay, right, so Mr. P, can you tell us how you got into fishing, please?
Yeah, I can. So, as a kid, like most kids, fascinated with everything and lots of little adventures. I found wrapped up in a bag in our garage at home, outside of Bolton, an old a fishing rod which my dad had made from a Centurion tank antenna when he was in the army driving tanks in the German borders after the war. I've got to say that. And he'd made this fishing rod, and I wanted to go fishing. My uncle, my dad's sister's husband, was massive into fishing. He did match fishing, and every time I went around to their house, he took me in the dining room, and the dining room probably had, I don't know, 100 fishing rods in it, and I had a massive fascination with them. But as kids, we started fishing on a little place called Bradshaw Brook, which is a little sort of trout stream outside of Bolton in the hills, and it was quite renowned, and it was very private, and it had a bailiff that would chase us off if he caught us, but he could never catch us. That was young and slim back then. And we had, the favourite place was a weir pool, which if we fished below the weir pool, which was quite deep, we could catch trout or bullheads or miller's thumb, I think you call them. Yeah, so then came match fishing. I started an engineering apprenticeship, and there were a bunch of the guys that I worked with. By this time, I joined this thing called Bolton Anglers Association. I was just generally going fishing on lots of different lodges, as we call them. I've never heard that word used down south.
Lodges? No, is that stretches of water?
No, they're little freshwaters. So they're normally, I think it originates from, I think they're the waters that were built for the mills.
Right.
So I think it's a mill lodge, and it's a water that was specifically built in the early days to take water from to run all the steam engines and what have you that ran all the cotton mills around Bolton. So, well, around the northwest entirely. It's a phrase all over the northwest. Most of the fishing club waters are what they call lodges, like small lakes, I guess, if you like.
Mill ponds.
And a lot of them, mill ponds, yeah. Well, a lot of them are like that. So fishing in general, coarse fish, just fishing for all sorts. Normally float fishing or feeder fishing, swing tips, quiver tips, whatever we.
I love a swing tip.
Whatever we a donkey top, that's the one, isn't it?
Yeah. So how did you get into lure fishing?
So lure fishing, I did a lot when I was younger. I did a lot in the winter. So on these same waters, they had lots of pike in the same waters. So we generally mix it up a bit and go and chuck some. I can't even remember what they were called. Proper old cheap lures. You just
Andy Lush would know.
Yeah. Yeah. They're probably even too old for Andy, because most of them were inherited as well. I didn't buy so much in those days. I got given things. But yeah, so I think 17, I got myself a Triumph Spitfire, an Inca yellow Triumph Spitfire 1300, and I could get my Reaver box on the passenger seat.
Oh yeah.
And my rod hold all. If I zipped the back window out, I could put the rod hold all through the car into the passenger footwell.
Yeah.
And my net bag in the boot, and I started going off fishing all these matches with this club from work, and it was real good fun because it was every Sunday morning we met up at this like bus terminus, and then we all followed each other to wherever the match was going to be, and it was a different venue somewhere in the northwest of England, but a different venue every Saturday for about, I think, 6 or 8 months of every year, and it was like a little league, and that was all good fun, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Carried on with pleasure fishing. I didn't do any really serious lure fishing back then. It was mostly just filling in the winters. And I went working overseas. For 15 years in various countries. Did a bit of lure fishing in the Red Sea, tiger fish and barracuda and stuff. Funnily enough, on our way to scuba diving. So we had this mad Welshman that was one of my friends in Jeddah, and he had a fantastic boat, which about 10 of us could go out scuba diving on. And on the way there, we'd we'd troll a few rods in. There was a couple of stretches where you had like these reefs way out in the sea, but you had these reefs that almost came up like long pinnacles with canyons between them. And whilst we were traversing these canyons, we'd put lures out the back of the boat and
fantastic,
catch things like massive red snapper that went home for dinner,
Yeah.
and what have you. So yeah, it was good fun. And I didn't do. Funnily enough, I worked in Belgium for 4.5 years. Never fished apart from a bit of spinning for trout in the Ardennes. And then I worked in Holland in Amsterdam for about a year. But I never fished when I was living in Holland. I didn't have the fishing bug at all. I think it was more drinking. It's the drinking bug.
You did tell us you told me a drinking story when we were at Elite Pro down at Marine Power, so we won't mention that story. No.
Okay. So anyway, we was that anything to do with the Night of the Flaming? Yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah, I think it could have been. Yeah.
So eventually I finished up coming back to the UK. I've been around Middle East, Far East, Africa, working a few places in Europe, and I landed back in. I got a job in Bracknell, of all places. So I finished up getting set up home in Wokingham, which is near Reading, between Reading and Bracknell, and I was working at Siemens in Bracknell. And one of the immediately, pretty much as soon as I landed and settled, I thought, oh, I want to go fishing.
Yeah.
Not been fishing properly for ages. And there was a river really close to my house called the River Loddon, which I remembered reading from when I was like a teenager and early, sort of up to early 30s. And I remember reading all the reports in the Angling Times and the Angler's Mail with all these big barbel that people had been catching out of the River Loddon and the River Kennet, which were both close to where I lived. So I thought, I want to go and catch barbel, because I'd only ever caught one before, and it was just over £1 when they'd been stocked into the River Dane in Cheshire. So I got back into fishing, and it was predominantly barbel initially.
Right.
And for 9 years, I was doing almost nothing but barbel fishing. But through the barbel fishing, I met a guy called Keith Spear, who was a legend, or he's certainly a legend in my fishing world. And he was a really inspirational angler. He was the absolute master at trotting a stick float. And he used to, for a couple of clubs around here and St Albans Way, he did these stick float clinics every year to teach people. But he was fantastic at catching barbel, and he always caught them on a stick float with small baits and just keep feeding. Yeah. And he had up to, I think it was 17 pound 19 ounces on a stick float in the snow. This is a fantastic shot in the snow on the River Ivel. And there's fish that went on, and people caught at sort of 19 and 20 and scraping the record weights. But yeah, I mean, Keith sadly passed away a few years ago. But one thing he did, he came to a Barbel Society talk. He did a talk at my local Barbel Society meeting, and it was a talk on fishing for zander, vertical jigging for zander. And he had some pictures of some big pike as well. And he learned all this from a guy called Marcel Asbrook out in Holland. They'd got friendly through Keith going fishing the rivers over there. So anyway, he'd learned this, and he said, "Oh," and I was enthralled with all these pictures of these great big zander and pike and stuff from Holland. And he said, "Oh well, I go fishing at this place called Rutland Water, and a few times a year." I said, "Oh, I want to go there." So we went. We planned, and I think the following week we went to Rutland, and I think that was about. It was either 2000, I think it was 2007. And we went to Rutland Water, and I was just hooked instantly from the start, sitting in a boat and vertical jigging for these zander. And it was still, back then, it was still the same place where everybody's catching them now. Yeah, still the same little spots where the water comes in.
Yeah,
yeah. And we just set up drifts, and we drift past, and if we didn't have 100 to the boat by the end of the day, we'd be disappointed. But they were all sort of between £1 and I think a specimen was about £3 back
Yeah.
then. And then I said to him one day, I fancy trying that other one, Graffham Water. So this was still in the first winter, so we decided to go to Graffham Water. And
they were
the first time,
considerably bigger.
sorry?
They were considerably bigger.
No, they weren't back then. So we were fishing. Seriously, we were fishing for a bite. This is what people miss. So when I was fishing then, I was going to Graffham, and we'd go hoping to get one bite between us in the whole day.
2007 on Graffham was the season it kicked off massively. I remember in October, because I was obviously a school teacher, I got a phone call on the Sunday of the beginning of half term, and a friend of mine, Alan Dalton, was a warden at Graffham, and he went,
Okay.
Andy, you've got to come down. I went, I can't be bothered. He goes, no, you've got to come down. He kept saying, you've got to come down. I went, what are you trying to tell me? He said, it's gone mad. They opened up the valve, the inlet valve. I think it's near J or I-Boy. I can't
Near
remember.
I-Boy, and it was spitting out thousands of little fry.
Yeah, and everything in the reservoir had gone douche. And over the next few days, we had so many big Zeds. It was ridiculous.
That's crazy. I've known it to do that even in recent years when they turn that on, and if it's been closed off for a while, and the fry have all got in there.
Yeah, everyone was down there. I remember Martin Bowler was there of Angling Times trying to do a feature. He couldn't catch anything. It was quite funny. But Bob Church was fishing it with Mick Green.
Yeah, Bob Church was down there a lot when I used to go. He used to fish quite regular.
There was quite a few of us down there. It was brilliant, but everything seemed to just gravitate around this pump that had come on. Yeah, but we didn't know what we were doing really. We were just doing just basic jigging stuff.
Yeah, we were just learning. Didn't have a fish finder or anything back then. And then I think it was the second year I bought a black and white Eagle Cuda.
Eagle
300 or something. I can't remember what it was called.
A little fish images on. Did you get the fish images
rectangular thing? Yeah, but somebody soon told me to switch off the fish images.
Look for the arches.
Look for the little arches, and it was great. I was going to Rutland, and it was only black and white, but you could see all the little, like, I guess what the Americans would call the walleye wolf pack. You'd go along at Graffham. You could go along at Rutland. You could drive for miles and not see anything, and then there'd be a little hump on the bottom, just one little hump, and that little hump would be absolutely covered with all these little arches.
Yeah,
it was like that everywhere. Or there'd be a little dip, a little hollow, and there'd be a big cloud of these little arches around it. And the Zander they really honed in on these little marks.
We had those Eagle fish finders, and we didn't believe them, but we just used them for the depth.
Yeah.
Because we were so like, isn't it? So we were just going around with these things, and it was weird, wasn't it? Because you go around and you wouldn't believe the depth changes on both those resis. That suddenly you go, hold on a minute, it's just dropped another 5 foot. It's come up again. These can't be correct. So there was a lot of. I don't know about you, but I was thinking, are these things actually very accurate? Because you're trying to. It was pretty basic tech, wasn't it, back then? And trying to work out actually what actually the tech was showing you.
See, I was doing it the opposite. I wasn't using it for the depth, because the depth I was just dropping my lure down and lifting it up, and then I'd stop touching bottom, so I'd drop it down a bit more, or it'd start. Or the rod was coming higher and higher up in my hand, so I'd wind a bit of line in. But I was just lifting it up sort of 6 inches and dropping it down and lifting it up and dropping it down.
We've been fly fishing these places to death for the predators.
Yeah.
Probably when you shouldn't have been. So we were trying to piece together the few fish that we managed to catch with the depths and get some correlation, but we couldn't quite work out what the bloody hell was going on, because we didn't have the right information from the finders.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult to piece together. Anyway, so yeah, this is really, I like this chronology. So you started vertical jigging on these resis with this guy who'd known for the barbel fishing.
Yeah, and we fished together at least a few times every winter, right up to the year he passed away, which I think is 5 years ago now.
Is that the guy you've put a recent picture of on Facebook?
It is, yeah. And do you know what? I've never seen anything like it. So his wife asked myself. So Marcel Asbrook, I'd been in contact with for probably about 2 years, just chit-chatting on on different platforms and asking advice on stuff. But I'd never met him. And then his wife, Keith's wife, asked both myself and Marcel to be pallbearers at his funeral.
Right.
And that was, funnily enough, that was when I met Marcel. He came across to the UK, and we were kind of shoulder to shoulder carrying a coffin, and that was the first time I met Marcel. But it was incredible. It was the ceremony was at a crematorium just outside of St Albans, and they reckoned, so they had to close the doors like for the service in the crematorium, and they reckon there were up to about 1,500 people still stood outside.
Wow.
Just never seen a turnout like it, and it was all anglers.
I think angling's a great sport. It's the tool to bring all these, I'm going to say men, but it's mainly men, together to talk about a load of nonsense, but using angling as the tool to do it.
Yeah.
Which is great, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Keith was quite often on with Keith Arthur or Nigel Botherway in the on the not talk sport. What was he called?
Tight Lines, was it? It was a Friday night one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Was it Friday night? Yeah, I think it was a Friday night.
Yeah, in the bothy. But
yeah,
it's what's gone on to become Nigel Botherway's thing on the radio, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's carried it on the radio.
Yeah, those were the days. There was a lot of fishing. There was a lot, because I suppose YouTube wasn't around or had only just started, so there was still a bit more fishing on normal channels of communication that we used to use. Cool. So you've started now getting into your lure fishing on the big waters.
Yeah.
So what's kind of taken over from there? Is it progression with the techniques and learning the techniques that we've combined with the tech?
I think it's a fascination. I had the black and white eagle, and then I got funnily enough, I got a black and white Lawrence X4, which I've still got because it was smaller and lighter. And I got one of the ice fishing bags for that. So when I turned up at Grafham, I had the whole thing self-contained with the 12-volt battery in this Lawrence ice fishing bag, and I had that in one hand. I think we had landing nets then, so I had that in one hand, landing net, two rods, or one rod maybe at the start, and my lure bag over my shoulder, and that was it.
How things have changed.
Oh man, I still try to do that when I go fly fishing, but I still got to take the sonar as well. It's a bigger one. But yeah, I went to that, and then I went to what was the next one? The next one was a Lawrence HDS 7 Touch, and then I went from that to a HDS 9 Carbon, which I was reasonably happy with, to be honest. And I was getting on. I'd kind of figured them out absolutely, and people were already asking me questions, and I was already sort of sorting everybody else's Lawrence fish finders out at the time. But then I started fishing with Paul Parnell, and Paul had a hummingbird Solix, and he kept saying, "There's a fish over there. There's a fish over there. There's a fish," and I could never see them on the Lawrence. on the side image, I could never see on the side imaging what Paul was seeing. Let's just
explain to people, because you're talking about a lot of your early kit setups with sonar straight down under the boat in that cone.
Yeah,
and so would you say about 2014 over here side imaging was available? Was it about then? So in the UK, I think it's available about then or then abouts. Would you agree that the advent of side imaging really took sonar and using electronics for fish finding to the next level?
Yeah, I think it's the biggest. I think that's probably the biggest advancement for general fishing, for predator fishing especially. So there might be people out there not knowing what the hell we're on about. So if I just explain this really simply, imagine you've got two torches shining out at 90 degrees to the side of your boat. That's basically side imaging, isn't it? As you're going along, and it's showing up the shadows of the fish that you see as you're going along, because the sonar hits the fish, but it creates the shadow, and that's what it does. Side imaging. And you see a little white maggot, and then somewhere behind it a shadow. Yeah,
and the further the distance of the shadow is, the higher up in the water it is. Basically, that's the basic. So for those that don't know, we were using sonars to look down under the boat. But as soon as this side imaging came out, you could actually scan the water to the side of the boat. And you
Yeah.
could do it probably to about 100 efficiently to about 120 feet either side of the boat, which was a game changer, wasn't it, for us trying to find?
Yeah, it kind of used to be. It used to be. They used to say 2.5 to 3 times the depth, didn't they? Originally, in the early ones.
Yeah. But it really did transform the fishing. So side imaging came in about that sort of time, and then so you were using Lowrance. Then you then changed to Hummingbird, did you? Because you could see that Hummingbird have always been renowned for having the best side imaging units.
Well, to be honest with you, I was I was using Lawrence, and I was jealous of Paul's Hummingbird because he was seeing stuff I wasn't. And then I got an email from a lady at Marathon Leisure, who's the distributor for Hummingbird in the UK, saying that I've been talking to a lot of people about knowledgeable people with sonar, and your name keeps coming up. She said, I was wondering if you might be interested in joining our sort of pro staff team. And I kind of said, yeah, well, I've already got all this gear. I don't just want to go and spend a load more money and buy new, but it was made worth my while to switch. So
cool. So now you've got your Hummingbird set up. So obviously Hummingbird is really good with the side imaging. I use all my side imaging stuff's Hummingbird because I think it's just superb.
Yeah,
and it's very, very intuitive to use as well. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not very difficult to get the grips off for the basics. So so this is now a game changer, isn't it, on the big waters and on rivers as well. Well, any water where you can get a boat on, really, it's a game changer because you can scan very quickly as you're going past areas. So
it's amazing for rivers because you can basically set it to the width of the river and just drive up the middle.
Yeah. Now the next thing,
and then crash into things because
you're not looking
down there.
The next thing I came across was a 360.
Yeah.
So could you just explain to everyone who we've completely lost now what a 360 is?
So 360 basically was an innovation that Hummingbird again came up with. At the time, Hummingbird were just in the process of bringing out what they call mega side imaging, which is basically going into megahertz frequency. So generally with a high frequency, you'll get a much clearer image, but you won't see as far. So Hummingbird were just in the process of bringing out mega imaging. So there's actually a guy that I talk quite regularly with that came up with the concept, and they decided to try putting a transducer in a bath of oil and spinning it around, sort of like the normal side imaging transducer. Put it on a little stepper motor, put a cowl over it that was filled with oil, and whizzed it around inside.
Right, that's how they started off.
That was the original 360, and then the 360 that you and I know now was brought out after mega imaging had kind of become established.
Yeah. So guys that don't understand, the side imaging works really well when the boat's moving. Now the early models work really well about 3 miles an hour, but the later models, because they're more high what's the word, resolution, and everything works better. You can go a lot slower, can't you, Ian? But when the boat's still, the side imaging doesn't work.
You can still see things, I think, on Hummingbird side imaging. You will still see things, but it's very difficult to properly position them.
So this 360s are ideal when you're stationary because you can see literally 360 degrees around where you are because you can set the radius again as long as it's not too far. So Hummingbird were ingenious really because they brought out a system which you could scan the water as you were moving, and then they brought out a secondary system which could scan the water as you were stationary but around the boat. And I think those two things combined, particularly for me, were eye openers, and you could see so much more, couldn't you, of what was going on beneath the water. Now obviously all of this is historical.
Yeah, I'll tell you the big revolution for me with 360 was you could track fish.
Yeah.
So you could actually, if you were on a shoal of fish, or if there were a shoal of fish 20 feet in front of you, and they disappeared, you could see with the rotation of the 360 and the constant refreshing, you could see where they were going.
As long as they didn't move too quick.
So you'd still see them, but you see
they'd have moved a lot further by the time it
Yeah,
gets round
yeah.
again.
A few of us now getting this extra tech, and we are slowly working out how to use it, because it wasn't straightforward. You had to have different cables and
Yeah,
obviously look, batteries are another problem because you need lots of battery power for these different things.
yeah. So you finished
Oh,
up taking a car battery to power your sonar
crazy.
instead of a little. I think my original battery was a 7 amp hour lithium ion battery, which I had in this little ice shuttle thing. And then you get to the point, and then I finished up carrying I think 110 amp car battery, which I could just about carry.
Take us 3 hours to get the gear down to the jetty, wouldn't it, to set the boats up? It was ridiculous. And you need to hire like a Sherpa to give you a hand to get it down from your car. It was just like crazy stuff. Anyway, so things the technology in angling was amazing, wasn't it? Really, because you had Humminbird were really they were setting the way. The side imaging, I still believe Hummingbird's the best, and of course they brought the 360 out. But then Garmin kind of stole a march on everybody. Am I right in saying that?
I mean, a lot of the stuff we use, Andy, even side imaging, it comes from the military.
Yeah, I bet.
But
Yeah.
it's developed. Lots of these things are developed for commercial stroke military use for, searching for oil pipelines, searching for undersea cables. And the military use a lot of this stuff for searching for sunken boats, submarines, all that kind of stuff. So, but they'll tow a big side imaging boom along 100 foot deep behind a boat.
I mean, my local EA, I've got this £100,000 system that they use. They said it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've not such a. There's literally a TV screen they have in the boat, and it's like they can see. It's like watching a black and white TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like we used to when we were kids with actually people on it. Yeah. Sorry, I butted in. I do apologise.
But yeah, no. So the back then the military and commercial companies, mostly I think it's mostly around sort of military stroke oil companies that kind of develop all this stuff. Yeah. And they developed something called forward facing, or was it forward looking sonar? I think was the original thing they came up with, and it was basically looking out in front of a boat, and they had it to such a degree that they could pretty much process a live image, although it wasn't the best, and that's where the original Panoptics came from. I don't know if you remember, the original Panoptics was you had two choices of transducer. You had one that you could put on to look forwards, and a different one that you could put on to look straight down.
Yeah.
And Lawrence brought out something similar. I can't even remember what theirs was called.
No, but I remember I was musky fishing in America, and this would have been, crikey, 2019.
Yeah.
When did COVID? Was COVID 220? Is he before
COVID-19?
So it's 2018. I'm on a boat on a musky fishing, and Brad Hoppy is talking to one of the main guys at Humminbird, and they were discussing the lawsuits that Garmin and Lowrance were having against each other for the live scope. And then one of those companies was having another lawsuit with Humminbird for either the 360 or the. It was crazy just listening, going, what? Because they'd all reckon they got patents, hadn't they, for different things. And
I think it was Dynamaging was the original one. So I think Lawrence was suing everybody for copying Dynamaging, and I think Humminbird was suing everybody for side imaging.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
And everybody was suing Garmin.
Yes. So Garmin, Lowrance, and Humminbird all vying for these spots within the fishing tech world. But I think Garmin stole a march with LiveScope, and then Lowrance produced a system that was very close, wasn't it? And as good, virtually.
The original, as close as the original Panoptics, yeah.
Yeah, and then Humminbird, obviously, they were, because of all these lawsuits, I think they were concentrating on the 360 more. And then, obviously, the last 2 or 3 years, Humminbird have brought out their live as well.
Yeah, so when it went from Panoptics to LiveScope, Garmin licensed a technology from another company, from a commercial company, and then somehow they I can't remember if they allowed the license to be used by Lawrence, or I heard recently that it was all that the license was all the company that owned the license for LiveScope with the 3 beam transducers was actually recently bought out by Raymarine.
Which is a fourth company coming in on the tech side.
Yeah, and that Raymarine actually now own the original license. So,
right.
And so further development on that would have to include Raymarine, I think. But yeah, Hummingbird, I don't know, they weren't, I don't think they saw it initially as being something that was going to hit as big as it did. Because you got to remember, these companies they're all about bass fishing.
Yes. Yeah.
In the States, and everything is developed apart from Raymarine and probably Garmin prior to that. I think Garmin were very poor as being an entrant into US bass fishing. Everybody had either there were half the people had Hummingbird and half the people had Lawrence.
Yeah.
And Garmin were just sort of on the fringes somewhere, and they came up with this live scope that just looked phenomenal. And you could see actual fish swimming around and stuff like that. But I think initially a lot of people thought this isn't going to be very big. And I think if you've been involved with technological development at all, which I have over the years, it is very much about getting there first, and it can take a very long time to catch up. I used to. When I was studying, we had a thing with Samsung as a company and Samsung as a corporation. The board won't sign off an idea unless it can completely recover all of its R&D costs and all of the production costs, production tooling and everything else. If it can't cover all that cost in the first 6 months, because they're saying with that level of technology, within 6 months, all the competition will have it as well. So you only have the market to yourself for 6 months.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, but with the fishing tech, it takes a lot longer because you've got
So we may have lost one or two people with the live scopes. So live scopes, basically, you're kind of looking at. It's not. People think, oh, you can see everything. You can't see everything. You kind of got. You have to kind of. Get to know what the screen's telling you, don't you? So you kind of see images on your screen. It's very difficult sometimes to tell species of fish, and sometimes you can get weed and fish mixed up still on a live scope if you're not paying attention. So it's not like everyone thinks you turn it on and suddenly you've got this magic picture in front of you. You have to kind of get to know the settings. So before we leave tech, that's the thing.
That's the same with any type of sonar. You've got to figure out.
Yeah.
You've got to figure out what it is you're looking at, and that is the problem that most people have with any type of technology.
Going forward with this now, is this where you find you have the most interest with this tech? You like really diving deep into the what's behind it and how you can set the screens up as best you can?
Yeah, there is that, but there's also the interpretation of what the screen's showing you. So I hear so often people, and I've done it myself, and I'm sure you've done it as well, where we'll sit on a shoulder bream all day, or certainly for an hour. We'll sit on a shoulder bream for an hour and cast lures out thinking they're perch, and that's because we've not, at that point we've probably developed our ability to kind of go, they're not perch, and it's kind of that sort of thing. It's like telling the difference between zander and pike and all that kind of, or carp or whatever. Yeah, it's interpreting what you're seeing, or is that a field of stones?
Yeah,
or are they fish?
Yeah, it's and you learn so much because you're right. So I remember combining the live scope with side imaging, bream shoals that I'd find out on side imaging that I weren't sure if they're bream or perch, and you spend an inordinate amount of time sitting on these perch shoals that were bream. With the live now you know what you're looking for. You can kind of dial in, can't you? And go, actually, they're bream.
You learn an awful lot about fish behaviour as well.
Yes, and I also learned an awful lot about lures, and I still am. Sometimes people think I'm mad. I will find an area that's got no fish in it, and particularly crankbaits. I love chucking cranks and just trying to work out what depth they're coming back.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how the same model, two different baits, could be 2 foot difference. Now, you've got a brilliant story. Remember about 3 months ago, you were fishing with was it a crankbait? I can't remember now.
Oh, cranks and jerks on Grapham.
Yeah.
With the grey algae in the water, the stuff that was...
This is incredible.
Everything was getting covered in grey algae. And and for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, all of the crankbaits and jerkbaits were running at about 5 or 6 foot under depth.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, couldn't believe it. I couldn't get things to go down.
So you're using crankbaits that should have gone 12, 14 foot, and actually the braid was being held up by the algae.
Yeah, all the lure. Yeah, I think it probably was the braid being held up.
Yeah. And so, but without the life scope, you would have no idea, would you?
But it could have been the lure as well. It could have been more buoyancy, keeping the lure up as well.
Could have been, couldn't it? And I think these are the things that when we have chats, we sort of get onto this quite quick, don't we? We kind of go, God, I'm not going to believe what happened the other day. And because we can visually see it, you can kind of go, I would never have believed that unless I've seen it. So it's amazing. So people think, oh, it's not just a fish catching tool, is it? It actually allows you to. The way I explain it to people is you kind of open Pandora's box and you kind of go, oh, there's so much more to learn.
Oh man, the number of people that say, "Oh, you've got that live, yeah, it's not really fishing anymore. You know, it does it all for you." And I'm like, oh, it's quite the opposite, to be honest, mate. Yeah. Because what it does is it lets you sit all day and watch fish not react to anything.
Yeah.
And if you were fishing without it, you'd have moved.
Yeah.
If you were fishing without it, you'd have had a few casts and gone, yeah, there's nothing here. We'll go and try somewhere else. But with this now, when you can see 50 or 60 big perch all in a great big shoal in front of you, and they're not reacting to baits, it then becomes a challenge. Like, you will react to something. I'm not going anywhere until you've proven that you're perch.
Yes, we've done it, haven't we? And but it's also then the challenge of trying different techniques, because you can actually see, you can gauge, can't you? If you suddenly start getting a response, you're learning again. You haven't got to be catching necessarily. You get follows. You go, okay, that's that. I'm getting closer to cracking this little code for the next few minutes and catching one. And it's an amazing tool. And I just think I've certainly learned so much the last few years. Has accelerated my lure fishing because I can actually see what the lures are doing, and I see how pike are reacting and pike at different times of the year. And another thing I've learned a lot is how fish respond to boat pressure. The engine, that's incredible. I would never have believed it. Ian, we've been talking for 47 minutes just on this recording. So, what I'm going to try and do. Ian is he's a goldmine of information. But I'm going to try and get him to do 1 or 2 guest appearances next year. We've kind of broached this. I haven't quite got him. I haven't signed the check yet for him, but I will do. But if we can get you on episode 3, just to do some little tech reviews, that'd be awesome if you've got time. Because there'd be loads of things you could show us with, like the new Humminbird screens. Because I've seen the Solix, but is there another 1 or 2 that have come out since?
There's just one, just Apex.
So the touch screen, which is amazing. You can with your fingers, as with touch screens, you can do all sorts of things. And basically, we could go in. There's so much depth we could go into with tech that you could show us on the podcast. It'd be amazing. But there's so many hours of this because people
gather some questions as well.
Yeah, I know people want to see boat setups and all sorts. So what we'll do, guys, we'll if you're up for it, next, because episode season 2 is going to come to a close soon, but season 3 we might start earlier.
Yeah.
So if we can get Ian on, that'd be
maybe cool. We do a bit of filming out on the water and patch it in somehow.
So are you happy, guys, contacting you via Messenger? Is that the best way?
Yeah. Facebook? Messenger.
Cool.
Or Instagram. Yeah. So Ian Crook on Facebook, or at Crookies Catches on Instagram.
Well, I'll put a little caption here. Right, buddy. I really appreciate your time. We could have spoken for hours, and hopefully we've given people a bit of a flavour about that progression into what happened with the tech scene in the UK and your involvement within it and how you kind of got into it. But we'll try and get you on in season. I keep saying episode 3 in season 3, and I think we could dive a lot deeper. And guys, get your comments in. If you need any help, Crookie will give you a hand, and we'll see where we can take this. Ian, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Andy.
Right, guys, that's it for this week. Big thank you to Ian and all the other guys who have contributed. Next week, I'm hoping to have Sean Fraustus on from myfishinglures.co.uk, internet allowing. And it leaves me to say one final thing. Thank you for watching.